We start our show with a developing story that's rocked the sports world over the last day. Hall of Famer and Trailblazers head coach Chauncey Billups was arrested for his involvement in an illegal poker operation tied to the mafia. Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier and former Cavaliers player and assistant coach Damon Jones, they were arrested in a related but separate illegal sports betting case in which Billups is also tied. Head coach of the Heat, Erik Spoelstra, he spoke about this for the first time this morning.
You're left with no other choice. The league doesn't wait. It doesn't stop for you. We had a meeting yesterday to address things, and then today it was the task at hand. And if you've been around long enough in this league, you have to learn how to compartmentalize and focus on the most immediate thing, and that's preparing for an important game tonight.
Support him through and through. That's our brother out there today. It felt kind of weird him not being here, actually, because he's the first person I get to talk to him.
I watched him first, like,
and he brings that great energy to our team. So for us, it's uplifting that and also playing for the North.
Okay, so that's what they were saying out of Miami about Terry Rozier. Our senior writer, Ramona Shelburne, is important. That's where the Trailblazers are preparing to play their first game in the wake of this gambling probe. So, Ramona, you were with the Blazers shortly before the show. What can you tell us about how they're processing the arrest of their head coach?
Oof. Well, today was better than yesterday. Let's start with that, because yesterday was incredibly sad. I mean, they learned of this like we all did about 6 o'clock in the morning. Most of them had woken up after a very late game where they lost the season opener to the Timberwolves in a heartbreaking loss. And they got the news 6 o'clock in the morning. And later on that day, they were scheduled to come in around noon. And I talked to Tiago Splitter just a minute ago, and he said, you know, it was just a kind of a maintenance day, get what you need. But what everyone really needed was to come together and talk about things and process things. And so General Manager Joe Cronin and Tiago Splitter, who was named the interim head coach here, talked to the team, and everybody processed and gathered together. Today, it's shoot around. They got a game against the Warriors later on tonight, and it's a difficult situation for all of these young players who were very close to Chauncey Billups. This is a guy who really connects. He's not just an X's and O's guy. He's great at that, but he's also a very strong persona and personality in that room. And so I think what most people are just trying to process is, hey, you can't talk to him. I mean, he's under indictment now, and it was arraigned in court yesterday. But also, they have a game to play. And so how do you go from one day to the next? And that's now their job.
Okay, so that's an important detail there, Ramona. You're saying that the players and the coaches, they have not been able to speak with Chauncey Billups here as we welcome in our front office insider, Bobby Marks, our senior writer and insiders, Brian Windhorst and Shams Charania. Shams, I'm going to start with you here. What are the next steps in the light of this new day?
Look, at the next steps here are the court dates and their days in court, both Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier. And those have been set November 24th for Chauncey Billups in New York, then Terry Rozier on December 8th. I've spoken to the lawyers and representatives for both Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier, and they tell me both the coach and the player will fight these FBI charges, and they're all expecting a pretty drawn-out process. I'm told both individuals are under the belief that this will be at least 6 to 12 months of an ordeal as they fight these FBI charges. Let's go back and remember the summer of 2024, the Jontay Porter ban, an eventual charge that has really led to all of this. There were about 5 co-conspirators, defendants. Now that list has grown to upwards of 30. And so we still don't know. The league is still waiting to see just how vast this goes. And the first process for that starts with all these people that have been arrested, their days in court. An FBI source told me on Thursday that they're still continuing to gather more information and seeing who out of this new arrest group cooperates with them.
Okay, so November 24th, that court date for Chauncey Billups, and December 8th here for Terry Rozier. Bobby, you've spent decades in league offices here. When you hear this, what's the most important detail as you're processing this story and as basketball fans around the world are trying to figure out what this means for the sport going forward?
Well, Malika, I think there's 2 ways to look at it. There's the gambling on basketball games, and then there's the tipping part of it. Tipping is considered giving inside information here, and that's what Terry Rozier and Damon Jones, the former assistant coach and player, are being accused of here. I think the interesting thing with Terry Rozier, remember, this is a player that's under contract for $26 million. If this case, how long does this case draw out? What happens in Miami with him there? Remember, in the Jontay Porter situation, before he even pleaded guilty, he was banned from the NBA. And the more you talk about people around the NBA who have read this indictment, and yes, innocent before guilty here, the question is when, not if, Terry Rozier will get banned from the NBA and we'll never see him again.
This was something that happened in 2023. It was something that the NBA investigated. How could they allow him to continue to play? And so I spoke to the league about this, and they have, I think, a candid answer. It's not an answer that people are going to necessarily like. They don't have the investigative powers. They didn't have the investigative powers to corroborate these charges. They don't have the ability to wiretap. They don't have the ability to track bank records. They don't have the ability to get witnesses to turn on each other. And the league is just, frankly, an inconvenient truth is, in this new era where there's this whole other reality out there, all these other forces with all this gambling, they're limited in what they can do. And they were limited in what they could do for Terry Rozier. They couldn't prove it, and so they moved on. The federal government did. And they, after 2 years of investigations, indicted him.
And it's interesting to hear players talk about that very thing this morning, Brian, because for players, there is a human aspect to all of this, right? As teams around the league hold practices and hold shoot-around, they continue to weigh in. And Boston Celtics forward Jaylen Brown, he's also the vice president of the NBAPA. He spoke about how he feels that a care for players, it was left out of the equation when the league narrowed gambling's proximity to live games.
Me personally, I think, that whole world was introduced a couple years ago, and I don't think they took players into consideration, especially with, the energy and the behavior that goes around, gambling, and how that directly correlates with players. We don't benefit from any of the profits or anything like that, but we got to deal with, a lot of the extra negativity and scrutiny behind all the gambling stuff. And then on top of that, it creates more integrity issues, et cetera. So I'm not sure what the answer is going forward.
So, Brian, that's a really similar sentiment that I heard from Bruce Brown yesterday when he told me that he doesn't check his DMs. He can hear in real time in games when he's missed a shot. Players have missed shots that folks around the arena are yelling at them, maybe in different and more elevated ways than they would have when sports gambling was so close to the game.
Yeah, so I've talked to several veteran agents about this exact issue, and what there is a belief that maybe could happen, a growing group that suggests that maybe there needs to be a proactive step by the players themselves and potentially by the referees and the league's coaches to come out with a statement to say, we are going to follow the rules. The NBA has these rules. We know what these rules are, and we're going to follow them. And have the referees do the same thing and the coaches do the same thing. To use this as a situation to band together and make a statement that we understand what the rules are. We understand that not everybody's followed them. We understand it's changing. Let's agree together to work together, because it's going to take that. When gambling came into proliferation in America, we knew that it was going to change sports. We knew that there was going to be scandals along the way. We're grappling with that now.
Ramona, you are with a team that is as close to this as anyone, as the Miami Heat and the Portland Trail Blazers are really facing this head on. What have you heard on this front from players today?
Well, I think that's what's really hard for players is just to understand where they are right now. Where they have games to play, and it's really hard. Tiago Splitter told me, he goes, my advice to the players was just tune out social media, just completely, just don't go online, don't check anything right now, because everything they're hearing is going to be directed at this scandal and everything that's going on around them. But they're not, while they are involved, they're mostly just affected by it, right? And so they have to decide how to move forward as a team and as players, where you don't let this crash in over you, right? Yeah. And what Brian is saying of like players hearing this day to day, I mean, it is pervasive, and just in the league in general, everyone understands that when you allow gambling into the league, it is now a part of the league. And everyone, one veteran coach I talked to yesterday said, man, I don't even download the apps on my phone because I don't want anything ever to happen. I don't even want them on my phone. And so that's just a day-to-day reality. But here in Portland, the advice is don't listen to anything. Just tune out social media and just focus on the game tonight.
Bobby, before we move on here, I did want to ask you, the league right now is still looking into allegations of Malik Beasley and his involvement in potential gambling here. What ramifications could these new developments have on the way that the league is processing this, hearing what Brian is saying about them not having the same scope that someone like the FBI does?
Yeah, I mean, I think before the NBA allows Malik Beasley to play in the NBA again, they're going to have to look long and hard as far as the investigation here. And real quick, just on the Jaylen Brown, what he just mentioned, I fully agree with him here. Remember that there are arenas in the NBA that allow sports gambling, that you can actually gamble on NBA games in certain places here. And unless we get the prop bets under control, we're going to have situations like what we just saw yesterday morning occur more often.
And of course, we are one of the networks, right, that has had multiple different betting partners over the course of our coverage here. It's a good reminder to all of us that we need to be mindful of the human toll that can come along with this. Friends, thank you so very much for joining us here on NBA Today.